In this video, I will discuss the one US president they erased from history. But before we do that, I need some help. Please hit that like button for the algorithm. And if you are new here, please subscribe. They say the United States is the greatest nation on earth, and many of us who live here believe it to be true. We have the highest quality of life, the freest economy, and the people have the most freedom in the world. In fact, our country was built on the idea that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The only problem is that wasn't true when the country was founded, and it is still not true today. Throughout our nation's history, there have been many presidents who have betrayed the values this country was built on. But there has only been one president who did something so evil they tried to erase him from every history book. This is the one US president they don't want you to know about. And this is the history they don't teach you in school. Thomas Jefferson was a man of contradictions. He was a founding father who helped write the Declaration of Independence, yet he was a slave owner his entire life. He was the third president of the United States, but he also designed the University of Virginia. He wrote the first statute for religious freedom, and yet he had a child out of wedlock with a slave. He was the hero of the American Revolution, yet he sent troops to put down a slave rebellion. He doubled the size of the United States, yet he owned slaves. His ideals were built on the belief in individual liberty and equality before the law, yet he lived a life of privilege and never experienced true equality. Jefferson was born into a wealthy family in Virginia and inherited a large estate complete with hundreds of acres of land and, most importantly, slaves. All throughout his life, he enjoyed the benefits of being white and wealthy while at the same time participating in the oppression of others based on the color of their skin. As an example of this hypocrisy, early in his career, Jefferson opposed the slave trade and supported gradual emancipation. But once he started his own family, he decided slavery was necessary because it allowed him to maintain his wealth and status. In fact, when Jefferson died, 63 of his 68 grandchildren were the product of sexual relations between his sons and their slaves. Now, although Jefferson was a slave owner, he did oppose slavery. In fact, his will stipulated that all of his slaves were to be freed after his wife died. However, in the decades after his death, slavery continued to expand across the South and eventually became the primary economic engine for states like Georgia, South Carolina, and Mississippi. The story of Thomas Jefferson and slavery leads us to one of the darkest moments in American history, the Louisiana Purchase. In 1803, the United States purchased approximately 828,000 square miles of land from France for $15 million. This purchase nearly doubled the size of the United States and gave the young nation control of the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans. While this deal was great for the United States, it was devastating for the Native Americans who lived on the land, and especially the slaves who were now part of the transaction. That's right, the Louisiana Purchase included anywhere from 40 to 50,000 slaves. And whether or not they were able to walk away free depended on which state they ended up in. You see, prior to the Louisiana Purchase, only one state west of the Appalachian Mountains had been admitted to the Union, Vermont, in 1791. But the addition of so much new land meant several new states would soon join the Union. And this raised a very important question. Were these new states going to allow slavery or not? At the time, the United States was made up of 12 states with 6 slave states and 6 free states. To keep the balance of power between the North and the South, any new states admitted to the Union had to be a slave state. So, as the Louisiana territories were surveyed and prepared for statehood, a decision had to be made. Would they allow slavery or not? Well, before we get into what happened, if you're enjoying this video, please hit that like button. It really helps me out. Also, I have another channel where I discuss ancient aliens. Please check it out. Alright, back to the video. When the Louisiana Purchase was made, it was assumed that the vast majority of the land was not suitable for growing cotton. Cotton was king at the time, and the southern states relied heavily on the crop to fuel their economy. But, as it turned out, the lands west of the Mississippi were perfect for growing cotton. With the addition of the Louisiana Territory, the southern states realized they would gain more political power if slavery was allowed in the new states. Of course, this was terrible news for the slaves. Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of them were marched across the United States to their new owners in the South. Now, despite the fact that Thomas Jefferson was against slavery, he knew that the Louisiana Purchase would expand slavery into new areas. In fact, he said, "I tremble for the safety in what regards the rights of man in this country, that we should be engaged in so large a slave trade with our sister republic on the very brink of our own ports," but unfortunately, he did nothing to stop it. Over the next few decades, the United States continued to grow. Texas was added, Oregon was added, and even more slaves were marched across America to their new homes in the West. By 1850, the nation was split over the issue of slavery. Southerners believed that slavery was a necessity to their way of life, while Northerners argued that slavery was a moral evil. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected the 16th President of the United States on an anti-slavery platform. Soon after his election, 11 Southern states seceded from the Union and the Civil War began. What followed was for years of bloodshed and hatred. Nearly 620,000 Americans lost their lives during the war. And when it was over, the institution of slavery in the United States finally ended. Although slavery officially ended after the Civil War, it would be another 150 years before racial inequality ended in America. Thomas Jefferson is considered one of the founding fathers of the United States. He helped draft the Declaration of Independence and served as the third president of the United States from 1801 to 1809. Yet somehow his legacy has been largely forgotten. There is no statue of him in Washington, D.C. No U.S. presidents have his portrait hanging in the White House. And just one national park bears his name. But why? Well, it's obvious. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner who profited from the enslavement of others. As a result, many Americans feel he does not deserve to be honored as a hero. As far as the Louisiana Purchase goes, historians argue over whether or not Jefferson was right to make the purchase. Some say it was an important acquisition that greatly expanded the nation and led to the United States becoming a world power. Others argue that by purchasing slaves along with the land, Jefferson went against everything he believed in and helped preserve slavery in America for several more decades. One of the most painful ironies of American history is that the ideals of liberty and equality have always applied only to a select few. African Americans have been in America since before it was even a country. Yet for hundreds of years, they were denied basic human rights simply because of the color of their skin. Even today, African Americans face discrimination and injustice on a daily basis. And it seems like no matter how much progress we make, there will always be a new roadblock in the fight for equality. Despite the progress that has been made, there is still a long way to go. The United States was built on the idea that all men are created equal. But for African Americans, that has not been the case. From slavery to segregation to Jim Crow laws, African Americans have faced centuries of oppression and injustice. But despite the odds, they have persevered. They have fought for their rights and freedoms and have made great strides toward equality. Thomas Jefferson was a complex and contradictory figure. He was a slave owner who also believed that slavery was wrong. He helped found a nation on the principles of liberty and equality, yet he himself was never truly free. Despite his flaws, he is an important figure in American history, and his legacy continues to shape our nation today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and watch another one of my videos on the one civilization the government doesn't want you to know about. Thank you for watching.